It's unprecedented. You heard at the beginning of this pandemic that, to find a vaccine, often it takes 2-3 years. And so I have a hard time saying that there's been any real failure in this, because not only do we have one vaccine, we have 3. We're learning more about it. There's variant strains that have popped up, and it looks like, the Pfizer and the COVID, or the other, can't say the pharmaceutical companies, Moderna vaccine look like that they will cover even those variants. And then some interesting breaking news on the vaccine over the past week is that studies out of Israel and maybe UK are showing that a single dose is pretty close to effective as a double dose, or the second dose. And so that, simple math would tell you could vaccinate twice as many people with the same number of vaccines. If you remember earlier, they were hoping to find something that would be 60, at best 75% effective. Well, we've got a vaccine with 2 shots that's been shown to be 95% effective, and a single shot is showing around, some studies say 92%, some say 85%, but that's way better than what the standard was they were looking for initially. So that would be really great news if a single shot would cover the majority of the population. Perhaps we would still need to give a double shot to our most vulnerable. As you know, it was people over 65 that tended to succumb to this in the large numbers that we see, the 500,000 that was talked about yesterday in the little moment of silence. A lot of those were people with other existing conditions. So I think the rollout has been really pretty remarkable, and the fact that we've vaccinated as many as we have is great credit to the Trump-Pence team, who had Operation Warp Speed and had this set up to roll out. Now, I'm still frustrated that all the kids aren't in school. I think only about 41% of the kids nationwide are back in school, even though the science shows that the kids are the lowest risk. In fact, I think the mortality rate with the common flu is much higher than it's ever been for COVID, year in and year out, and we haven't done what we've done to the schools. Now, teachers, certainly we want to get them vaccinated if they're high risk, but bottom line is we need to get our kids back in school. And the parents are really showing the frustration in the area that they have. Now, Tennessee, we've done a pretty darn good job. I think Governor Lee has done a good job with the vaccination rollout. We have weekly meetings with him. It's maybe been bi-weekly. We have one later this week, and he's asking us where the problems are, what we can do better in our district. And I think for some people, there's still frustration in knowing where and when they're going to get it. Some of the drugstores now are providing them, and I think the Tennessee health.gov site will tell you, where you can be tested, where you can get your vaccination. So I'm not really frustrated much with the rollout, but I do think that we need to get this behind us, get businesses back open, get kids back in school, and get back to normal, get rid of these masks that I know everybody are so tired of wearing around. I know I am.
Well, it's almost become it's not so much to prevent the COVID in my mind anymore, as much as to avoid conflict with people. So
Right.
there's a bunch of us wearing the mask just not to argue about it. So
Yeah, from the very beginning, it was like, do we need masks? Then, maybe a mask. Now they're saying 2 masks, but these are small virus particles, and it's kind of like trying to keep mosquitoes out with a chain link fence.
yeah,
But again, using a physician analogy, if you bump your elbow or get it sore, you can put an ACE wrap on it, and it doesn't really help heal it, but it reminds you not to bump it. And I think masks remind people to be careful, that we need to be cautious of social distancing and things like that.
gotcha. Now, I think it was last week, taking a pretty steep turn here, but you expressed some concerns about the National Guard still being deployed in the Capitol. Can you kind of give your position on where all those concerns stemmed from?
Yeah, I tell you, I wish you could see, like, out my window, just right behind you, as you said. I can see guardsmen down there with rifles walking around, fencing and razor wire, and there's a 3-mile perimeter around the Capitol with no viable threat. I asked in an Armed Services hearing last week of the Secretary of Defense, or maybe it was Deputy Secretary, and other generals that were in the meeting, have there been any credible threats that would justify this kind of a presence. They said no. Of course, things could always evolve. But if you're going to follow chatter on social media, there's been chatter before the election, after the election, during the election, during the inauguration. It continues. We'll never take down these fences and razor wire if we rely on social media chatter. So yes, having 5,000 guardsmen in D.C. and having to come into the building through big fences and razor wire, which frankly, when I went to Afghanistan in 2011, I don't think the security around Bagram Airfield or our embassy in Kabul was like it is here at the Capitol. And you smile, but I'm really not kidding. It saddens me to see magnetometers to walk onto the House floor, because apparently some of our colleagues fear us, because that would be the only reason to have them. And the fact that you can't drive a car in the usual entrances without going through armed guards with single lane gates coming in and out. We can't have guests. I've got a World War II group up here today that I have to go off campus to go meet with rather than meet right here in this office, because they're restricting anybody from coming in. And the frustrating part is FBI, DOJ, Department of Defense, when you ask them for any evidence, they can't give it to you. So this is, to me, it's all for show. And Pelosi basically is the one that has the magnetometers in place and really is probably keeping the guardsmen in DC and keeping the optics of this shining city on the hill looking like a third world country that's undergoing a coup. Now, go to Venezuela if you want to see what it looks like when someone's trying to overthrow a government. We had a rally that turned into a riot on January 6th. It was so disappointing to me. I mean, it was an important day that we look at the structure of the election in various states, and it really didn't get to happen or play out the way it was supposed to, because there's always some jackwagons that get out of control and ruin it for everyone. But the people that stormed the Capitol were not what represent the party that I represent or the president that I represented. And I think that what we see here with the guards and the razor wire and the fencing is just poking the Republican Party and the president, former president, in the eye. And it needs to go. It's costing taxpayers $500 million so far. And these guys could be out administering vaccines and doing other duties that the guards normally do. And I know they want to go home. I'm grateful that they're here doing their job, but I'm sorry that they're here because we don't need them.
I gotcha. And I'm sorry, the $500 million figure, what date does that start from? I mean, I don't, were they deployed starting January 6th?
They started, I think they came in then, started putting up the fences, and I think the $500 million, again, $500 million, will be spent by March 4th or March 12th. We are hearing some rumors that they may leave. I think that's what they told me in the hearing last week, was that they may withdraw March 12th. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that date is. But yeah, so I think that $500 million is what's going to be spent from January 6th. Basically in 2 months' time.
Okay. One thing, obviously, the $2 trillion stimulus bill is not well received by everybody.
Right.
Do you believe that the marketplace is ready to stand on its own, or would you like to see an abridged stimulus go through Congress?
Well, as you know, there's been multiple stimulus packages passed, some in a bipartisan fashion. And, maybe a lot of people don't know that we have $1 trillion unspent sitting there right now that's already been passed. But yet this week, they're pushing forward a bill for $1.9 trillion more dollars, of which only 9% actually goes to COVID vaccinations, getting shots in people's arms. So 90% of it basically is Pelosi and Schumer's wish list, bailing out blue states who mismanaged their governments and shut down their states too early. There's $86 billion for union pension bailouts. There's a $200 million underground tunnel in Pelosi's home area of Silicon Valley that's in this bill. Of course, there's always the $200 million for the arts. There's the $56 billion going to raise minimum wage. So basically, it really has nothing to do. A lot of it has nothing to do with COVID. And I guess what's sad is we still have half of the PPP money out there ready to loan. 2/3 of the money that was allocated to help get schools reopened has not been spent. And so again, $1 trillion sitting there that could be repurposed for a number of these things, but yet they're pushing forward with another nearly $2 trillion package that we're supposed to vote on this Friday or Saturday that has so little to do with actual COVID. It's kind of like when Obama did his stimulus package back in 2009, the $1 trillion shovel-ready job, get people back to work, big flop. I don't think we can count for more than about 200 billion of that trillion. And this is just looks like a big Christmas tree wish list. President Biden was kind enough to challenge Republicans on the COVID bill, saying, what would they have me cut? What would they have me leave out? Well, believe me, you'll be hearing about that all week as we go through there, because to me, it looks like they could leave out essentially all of it. But, certainly if 90% is not in there for actual COVID relief, then we need to take a real close look at it. And it's going to probably be on a total party line vote, I would guess. I don't think any Republican will vote for it. And yet we have money that's been passed for COVID that has been bipartisan and is waiting to be spent.
I got you. Is there any talk of issuing and I totally acknowledge the unspent money previous, but has there been any talk of genuinely issuing a bill from the Republican side that says, look, here's what we can swallow? I know there's been a lot of conversation, but has the formal legislation been issued?
Yeah. Well, when you're in the minority about, we often don't get to draft the bills, but we can draft the amendments. So there are an awful lot of amendments that we're putting forth. Those aren't my committees of jurisdiction, but in conference this morning, I heard several members talking about amendments that would be offered that are more COVID directed. We have concerns about when they're trying to boost the unemployment benefits back up to where somebody's making more money sitting at home than they are working, that's job killers. I think the $15 minimum wage sounds good until you go pay $10 for your Big Mac, mm-hmm. or you go to Walmart and all of a sudden your cart that was $100 is now $200, because that does trickle back down to all of us. And so I think that we need to be very careful, because a lot of what's been going on that we're seeing in this bill as it comes out, again, totally partisan, didn't ask us. They're just moving forward with this. It's going to cost jobs, not create or help jobs.
Right. And for the small businesses that, of which I'm sensitive to, what do you think, and this is wholly subjective, but just from your perspective, what is your estimation that the $15 clause is going to make it through the process? Obviously, the composers of the bill have the House, Senate, and the White House. How realistic is the $15 minimum wage of making it through the process to law?
Well, I don't know. I think that it's possible that this bill will pass the House. One indicator will be they want to pass this bill on Friday, according to Steny Hoyer, but they warned us to be prepared to stay here and vote on Saturday. Assuming that there's no Republicans voting for this, that would mean with a very narrow majority that they have, I think they can only lose 5 of their members. If we're here Saturday, it's because they haven't gotten their own people on board. And, there's some states where that just won't work. States can kind of adjust their minimum wage, but if a $15 minimum wage, is not going to work in a lot of rural communities. It sounds good, but we're already seeing, look what's happening at the pump. Biden on day one cancels the Keystone XL pipeline, and adds a lot of regulations back in that we were able to achieve energy independence in this country, and everyone was enjoying $2 gas. And now, I've seen, I think I just paid $2.49 yesterday in Monteagle or somewhere when I was on my way to the airport to Nashville. And so we're going to see it, we're going to feel it at the pump. But when you start adding regulations back in and making it more difficult to do business, we're all going to pay. And so, maybe all this sounds good, this free money thing, more stimulus, that all sounds good, but that gets eaten up pretty quickly when grocery prices and just any goods that you buy go up by a higher margin. It seems like in the end, it never works out very well.
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's always, because of the news cycle, there's always going to be the legislation that dominates the media outlets. But what are some even your bills that are not getting as much camera time that you're excited about?
Sure. Well, one we introduced last Congress and probably will reintroduce is when volunteer workers went to New York to help with COVID. New York was trying to tax them a state tax when they're volunteering. Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax, but I think if you're a volunteer and you're going somewhere in a crisis, you shouldn't have to pay. I might say they're volunteers, but they're paid volunteers. But then they're getting taxed in the states they're in. So that's the bill that we're going to continue to look at. I introduced a bill early in January on Section 230, the transparency issue with big tech, where basically, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Apple, they're censoring content that they don't want. That was provided to them in Section 230, and now it's being used, I think, politically against people. I think we saw it used against our president. I actually saw it used in my own campaign and a lot of other people I know. I would post something and it would have a censorship tag saying, this is not accurate. And it's who made these guys the fact checkers. I get a kick out of watching CNN fact checkers because I think CNN is a propaganda news organization. Some people think Fox is, some people probably think you are, but people should have a right to decide. And you really, in today's age of journalism, you do have to look at multiple sources, because simply doing a Google search on page one, you see what they want you to see. You may have to go to page 2 or 3 to get an opposing opinion, but you're probably going to see the New York Times or the Washington Post or Wall Street Journal that used to be more reliable pop up first. So you have to kind of dig to find truth in journalism, if it even exists anymore. So I think it's really important that we don't operate under a state-run media. When 90% of the coverage of a president for 4 years is negative, I think there's a problem with that. And I think when social media is censoring, when they decided that the Hunter Biden story was not worthy of being posted, and then we find out after the election that, oh gosh, he's under an investigation. Whoops. Cuomo in New York now, he's come under fire. He's getting Pulitzer Prizes and writing books on leadership. And now we find that, he withheld information on nursing home deaths. So I think it's really important that we don't become what I remember Russia being in the 70s as a kid. We made fun of them because it was all propaganda. You couldn't believe anything you heard coming out of Russia. I feel like we're turning into that, and that's not what we're about in this country. That's not what our First Amendment's about. Our Second Amendment's under siege. We're in really unprecedented times right now. This is my 11th year here, and I've never seen it. To look out my windows and see razor wire and fencing and have to go through a magnetometer to get on the floor to cast a vote. It's just really discouraging what we are right now and how partisan it is, when there actually are a lot of people that would like to work together for the common good. And it just seems like in leadership, it's so polarized. It's all about the power. In the next election, we just see that over and over. So I also just other priorities for Tennessee. I'm on the House Armed Services Committee, so we're in the process of talking to Arnold Air Force Base, Oak Ridge Laboratories, and Y-12. They have buildings that are crumbling in. And as far as our nuclear modernization project, we need them. They're vital to it. Arnold's working with hypersonic weapons and other high-tech advanced missile defense. We have Redstone Arsenal. A lot of my constituents from Lincoln County travel every day to Redstone to work. And so, we're getting their submissions, Tennessee National Guard. We want to make sure when we draft our NDAA here in the upcoming months that they're all taken care of and they get the funding that they need to do their jobs. And we work closely with Tennessee Farm Bureau, and I'm on the Ag Committee again as well. So we just want to make sure that they don't get sideswiped again with new regulations like they tried to do with the waters of the U.S. back in 2015. And so we had a president that tried to undo 2 regulations for every one that came in. Now it seems like with the stroke of a pen, we're getting regulation after regulation. And so we really got to make sure we have the backs of our Tennessee farmers. So we'll do that and certainly keep our armed services men and women in the best shape we can.
Yeah, and just kind of dovetailing on the ag stuff. Rural Tennessee benefited dramatically from USDA rural support in grants and such. And Marion County, I don't remember the number, but really keep an eye on the rural infrastructure funds for us, because we've come a long ways, but we got a long ways to go.
Yeah, we're working with a lot of utilities on rural broadband, getting underserved areas, high-speed internet, which, as we learned when kids aren't in classes, if you're in a rural area, don't have good access to internet, it's hard to do an online class.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of work there, and there has been money. And Sonny Perdue was such a great Secretary of Agriculture with USDA. I really enjoyed working with him. We've worked with Bill Sack before, but hopefully, it's supposed to be a nonpartisan committee. Both Armed Services and Ag brag about being two of the most nonpartisan committees. Haven't seen that so far in Ag with the first couple hearings. Armed Services, we tend to do a little better, but right now, I think that there's a new sheriff in town, and he's letting his presence be known through executive orders. And I think the first 100 days, or at least me as a Republican, and I know not everyone listening is, but it's a cause for great concern. And then hopefully we can get back to some more regular order and try to do things for the good of the people. And like I said, I'm optimistic that with the vaccines going out at this rate, that hopefully businesses will open and we can see some sense of normalcy by summer. But it almost seems like up here they want to drag it out for what reason, I don't know.
I got you. Well, listen, I know your time's valuable, and I think your intro included that you may be going to the floor for a vote. So we'll end it there and tell you that we appreciate you staying in touch with us, and hopefully look forward to doing this again real soon.
That sounds good, David. Thank you. I appreciate you having me join you.
All right. I've turned off the recording. Just wanted to add,